Hello and welcome to our in-depth education for today. My name is Tanya Cross, leadership coach and coach's coach, helping you to actualize potential as a coach. So we are here today to have a powerhouse session on emotions, those very things that seem to feel like it runs you. We're going to decode your emotions. So I'm going to first of all take you through all the different emotions that you're going to experience. And we're also going to have a look at this like dynamic that plays out with our emotions. So let me go into that dynamic first. So this is a continuation from our class last week. Last week we talked about the emotional code and having a deep dive into shame and guilt. So if you had an opportunity to catch that, amazing. This is an extra additional session on from there. So essentially, I just want to paint you a picture around our emotions. Well, before I go into that one, let me get it ready. So essentially, our emotions are, we have entangled emotions. So sometimes we can perceive that emotion is a one experience and it is an isolated experience on its own. So we might feel sadness and we see sadness and we experience sadness and we think that it's just purely on our own. And what we're not being able to be aware or understanding is that it's actually an entangled dynamic in that moment. So essentially, here we have these different arousal levels. So it's like how much arousal do you have, and the emotional charge is the valency of the emotional charge. So if you imagine we have a center point in the middle, and so then from the center point we have either a pleasant or an unpleasant valency, and we also have an activated or a deactivated arousal state. And so essentially every dynamic that we or emotion that we experience has polar opposites. And so when we seek these polar or see these polar opposites, we might have a triggered moment, and let's say for example you're going up and you're going to start speaking and you can feel your nerves coming up and you're like starting to get nervous and you hear your voice quiver and you're starting to get really stressed about it. So you're feeling nervous and you feel sweaty palms and you're feeling that heart rate going and increasing. So that's your conscious dynamic that you're aware of and the feeling that you're aware of inside. But there's also an unconscious dynamic that's also in feeling that you also have, which is the relaxed side of yourself as well, but it's the unconscious part of you. So usually in the application of the Demartini method, for example, we're looking at what specific trait, action or inaction did it happen in order to feel a particular way. And so we look at more the action that creates the perception, but today we're just looking at emotions. So I want you to think about like every bit of happiness is entangled with sadness. We have alert with fatigue, with tense, with relaxed, with upset, with contented. And so we have equal and opposing dynamics that are at play in everyone's psyche. So if someone presents to you and they're very upset, what you also have to be aware of is that there is another unconscious part of themselves that is also very contented in their life and the way things is, and to the degree or the amount they're activated in that, and the degree of the emotional charge is the degree of the inverse on the opposite side. So if we come in as a coach and we only see the nervousness, we only see nervous, and we buy into that, we're actually not seeing the individual as a whole self. We're buying into one part of the emotion. So we want to be able to really expand our awareness to be able to see both sides. So this is a great picture to have up when you're working with clients and they're coming to you and they're like, I'm so depressed. It's like, okay, well, what part of them is really happy with life at the moment? What's the unconscious, pattern that is making them really happy at the moment? So when we're able to see that, we see the particular individual from a different lens or a more whole lens. And so I want you to also think about then in every kind of experience that we go through with all our emotions, there's like nuances within our emotion that we want to be aware of. There's like subtle differences, and sometimes it's only a lot of people who don't actually can even describe how they feel. When you ask them how they're feeling, they're like, I don't know, I'm just angry. It's like, okay, great. Well, maybe it's actually disappointment, and then they're acting angry because they don't know how to feel, or they don't know how to describe their name and name their feeling. So what we want to do is we're going to go into a deep dive into understanding all the different like nuances and the different feelings and sensations that people have with the different emotions that they experience. And then sometimes we can also have contradicting emotions. So it's like when we understand, like, we're both excited and anxious. We're like so excited for an opportunity. It's like, oh my gosh, but we're actually, oh my God, I'm super nervous too. And it's kind of this contradiction of emotions that are bubbling up inside. It's like both of them are there conscious at the same time. And so it's for us, it's also being able to kind of recognize these emotions and also know as a coach, especially, like, which emotion are we working on? Because sometimes if we're working on, and let's say they're going in to present and they're both excited and anxious, if we just go, what's the benefit? That's not going to help that. That's going to help the anxiousness, but the excited, it's just going to get more excited and more lopsided. And so we have to be able to pinpoint each specific moment in which we have the awareness of either excitement or anxiety, and making sure that we clear that with the appropriate question, especially if there's a contradicting of emotions and feelings that people are going through at the same time. So we're going to go through the different dynamics, and we're going to look at the opposing sides together. So if we have calmness, so you're going to feel calmness is relaxed in your body. You'll feel like your shoulders aren't tensed and hunched, but they're going to be down. You're going to feel like a sense of stillness in your body, not wanting to like move forward. Maybe your facial expression, like instead of having tension in your body and your face, that it feels more relaxed. So inside of your mind, you're going to be thinking of just a sense of well-being, sense of like being in the moment and just being here and now. So there's also less internal chatter and noise. But when we get frustration, so instead of calmness, but we've got frustration. So maybe it's frustration about a particular individual not doing what you want them to do. Maybe it's not frustration about your business not moving forward. And so frustration, you can always see, tension in their brow. You can see the increased heart rate, irritability, shortness of breath, restlessness comes with it. There can be in the mind all these triggers of like, why isn't this working? This should happen faster, the looping and replaying. So we covered a little bit this in last week's session. So you'll know a lot through people's face, like people, however many muscles we have in our face, but you can see a lot in someone's face, which is why sometimes it's a little hard to connect in with someone who's had maybe a lot of like Botox or a lot of filler in their face, is because if we can't see them like having expression, we're going to have to start looking at their eyes and looking at the pupil dilation, not their and the kind of just the different ways that their eyes contract and expand, as a way to test to see where are they at with their emotions right now. Because it's very difficult to understand and relate, because we pick up a lot of nuances in their body by us experience, like, oh, I'm kind of there with you. And we don't get to have that experience if there's some beauty treatments that have happened. So it's not that you can't, it's just that you have to adapt to find new ways to connect in with them. So when we are then, if we look at contented and disappointed. So I remember when one of the stories that my biological mum would tell me is that she says there was one time that we were walking down the street and we're going to see a friend, and I had said to my mum at the time that I feel really disappointed. So I was like 2 years old. She's like, to be able to, because I didn't have something to bring with me. And so I was able to like feel the emotion inside and experience it and name it. So disappointment is a heaviness in the chest and shoulders. You feel weighed down. You feel deflated and slumped. Tired posture, tightness in your breath, fatigue, coldness happens sometimes, and inactivity through disappointment. It may be like it didn't turn out the way that I wanted it. Some people are going through that right now in the States around the election. Self-doubt, what did I do wrong, or what did someone else do wrong? Loss of motivation, withdrawal from others can happen with disappointment. When we have the opposite, which is contentment, we can have our posture changes, we can have gentle breathing, we can have a relaxed smile, we've got like minimum movement, but there's a feeling of like rest and well-being inside of our body. And so we'll notice the difference. So what we want to be able to do is in our day, if we can name the feelings that we're having, I think a lot of the time people who apply the Demartini method feel like well, that's kind of ironic, right? You feel like that you're dissolving all feelings altogether forever, but actually feeling is what makes you human. It's what enriches the life experience. It makes life interesting, and it adds the color to life. And so we want to feel, it's that we want to feel the kind of richness of life as well. So it's that the paradox between how much work do we do and how much feeling do we have, but how much do we dissolve, how much we feel, but how much do we like live in our feelings. So there's not like a right or wrong answer, but it's like navigating between them. And so as we go through a few more different dynamics, we'll have a look at hopeful versus hopeless. So hopeful is upright, steady breathing, a sense of openness when you feel that you have your hopefulness. There's an energetic dynamic that you have inside, because you're like, oh, there's opportunity and possibility. So in your mind, you are thinking about that possibility. You're thinking about the future. You may be planning the future because you're hopeful, and so you're encouraging, and you've got this sense of purpose. So therefore, if you're hopeless, which sometimes some people can come to you and they're just like, it's just like hopeless. Like, I don't know if I can keep on trying. Like, what's the point in keep on trying? So they're going to have a heavy body. They're going to droop their shoulders. They're shallow in their breath. They're going to slumped and closed off posture, feeling drained. We notice this when people come into the breakthrough experience. You can see the difference of people who are carrying a lot of emotional dynamic, and you can see it in their physical body, of just like the weight of the world on their shoulders when they come in. They feel in their minds like nothing's going to change, of like lost interest, they're withdrawal and potentially isolated. And so you can tell a lot. That's why I really love airports. You get to learn so much about people and watch, because you get to see into their psyche by just watching their body language and their facial muscles and movement. So we also have happiness and sadness. That's probably like the most common one everyone knows, but someone's happy and also someone's sad. So I'm not going to go through those ones, but you pretty much should know those ones, I'm assuming. But I think that what we want to be able to do is essentially be able to tell the difference between like sadness, disappointment, depression, because some people could label sadness as depression, or some people could label depression as sadness. And so we want to be able to identify that, because we don't want to over exaggerate or under exaggerate an experience that someone is going through. So we can also have confidence and self-doubt. So confidence is shoulders up and broad. We've got an easy movement, and so they're calm, comfortable. They feel relaxed. They've normally got a really strong eye gaze when they are confident. We also have the thinking inside, I'm capable, I can do this. They're seeing a brighter future. And so when there's self-doubt, you see they're slumped again. They're fidgeting, avoiding eye contact. They're restricted. Maybe there's tension in their shoulders and their neck as a result. They're kind of hesitating because that doubt is like, I don't know. So they're cadence of their voice can stop and start. And so the result of that is, because they self-doubt, what am I going to say? Who's going to judge me? All of that. So they're questioning their own ability, and they're focused on all the past potential mistakes or the future potential mistakes that might be making. And so the internal dynamic that happens is like, I'm just not enough. I'm not enough. And so we'll go through one more, which is around like pride, like feeling proud and embarrassed. So it's kind of like showing yourself and then also hiding away. So proud is like, and this is one of the things that we definitely want to notice. And one of the questions I ask a lot of people is, how do you know when you're prideful or proud? So you want to know this, because a lot of times people can identify shame, but how do you identify pride? And so pride is this broad, open gestures, a big smile, warm, engaging. We tend to be more extroverted in our experience and our sharing. In our mind, we're like recognizing what we've done. We're thinking about what we've done. We share what we've done with others. and we're seeking like maybe sometimes validation for some people, they seek it. So embarrassed has this shame component to it. And so we get our cheeks kind of initially flush and get red and bright. So that can be helpful, especially when you ask people questions or you're working with someone and you notice, oh, you just went a bit rosy right now. So there may be some shame or embarrassment that just happened. I know that you don't necessarily get to hear that if you're on the phone, but you can still get a sense for that. So this can be especially with embarrassed, they can tremble in their voice and quiver in their voice because it's like, oh, I don't know if I want to. And then if you see them visually, they tend to restrict their movements and kind of become like inward. And so they're hyper focused on their social image. Self-criticism comes up way high. And so they replay their embarrassment event over and over again. So there are some kind of dynamics that happen inside of the mind when it comes to our emotions and the polar dynamic that happens. And so our job is also then to be able to hold the space, to be able to hold like pride and guilt together, or hide or create like pride and humility, for example, together. So, or excitement and anxiety together. Because if we have this, we understand that in some moments there's going to be contradiction dynamics around people's experience. So for example, working with a client where they had an affair, there's some pride in the affair because of the individual that they had the affair with, but then there's also guilt. So they're having this like, contradiction between how they feel. And so it's really important to notice this, particularly with some of your clients that you're working with, because if it is in a dynamic like that and it's affecting their work, affecting their business, affecting their life, and then we go in to go, okay, so what was the benefit, but we don't look at whatever the pridefulness part was and we clear that, then they may either amplify that part if you don't work on it correctly, or it gets unresolved and then doesn't clear the dynamic for that particular individual, as in you never go and clear the pride, the drawbacks of being with that particular individual and drawbacks, so that there's dissolving the pride and dissolving the guilt with the correct questions that are going to be helpful to be able to do that. And so the same goes where we talked about with excitement and anxiety. When a person comes to go and speak and they're going out to speak on stage, and you're helping them prep for that so they can dissolve any of like anxiety that they have, but also, and you find the benefit, but you also see that they've got contradicting, I'm also excited, then that actually can impact and influence their ability to go in. You've got to dissolve and look at both the contradicting dynamics and look at the excitement part as separate to the anxiety part, rather than kind of bunching them together. So that is a little wrap into and a little look into the emotions decoded. Hope you've loved the session for today. We are on a journey in really helping you to understand yourself, you as a coach, and help you to actualize your potential as a coach in as many ways as possible we can. So thank you for coming along for our class. If you want the download and resource, feel free to just type in Decode below and the team will get it to you straight away. Have a beautiful day, and I look forward to seeing you at the next perfect time.